Spraying to the point of runoff is extremely important for a number of reasons. First reason being, you've got to consider the emulsion as a vehicle for the active ingredient to be transmitted to the surface. So getting an application that is thorough prior to the point of runoff will allow the water to dry, and what that then does is leaves the active ingredient on the surface, which is creating your barrier against insects. So essentially it's think of the emulsion as a vehicle to transmit your active ingredient to the surface to get a complete and accurate barrier. So if your emulsion starts running down the wall, you've got two problems. One being you could potentially stain that surface and create an issue for trying to remove that stain, or obviously your homeowner, your customer's not going to be very happy with that or satisfied, you'll get a call back. Secondly, once the water or the emulsion runs down the wall, you're leaving an ineffective barrier. You're not allowing that water to dry and leave the active ingredient on the surface. Your barrier is essentially ineffective in those areas that the water has run down the surface. So very important to apply thoroughly prior to the point of runoff to allow the water to dry and leave the active ingredient on the surface where it should be. We're generally dealing with brass nozzles, so they do wear. If the pressure's too high, for example, they're designed to be accurate at approximately 40 psi out of the gun. So any higher, you risk the water or the pressure of the water coming out of the nozzle damaging the nozzle and creating an ill shape of the orifice. So essentially, if it's not shaped correctly, you can potentially not have the water vaporizing correctly or the correct droplet size, or you can risk it dripping down the nozzle and creating an overdosing situation or staining, or worse still, dripping it onto carpet or onto an area of timber floor or something that you could potentially stain and cause some problems with. If there's a blockage within the nozzle, you could be getting an incomplete spray pattern. So you might only be treating half of the area that you're thinking that you're treating. So there could be half of the nozzle is facing in one direction and you're not getting any spray to the other area. So having a blockage is obviously detrimental to your spray pattern and your application. So ensuring that your nozzles aren't blocked, one way of unblocking the nozzle you would think would be to use a metal pin or something in the orifice. It's very dangerous. Obviously you can deform the orifice and then create more problems for your spray pattern. The best way to resolve it would be possibly some air through the nozzle, remove the nozzle and try and possibly blow some air through it to release the blockage, or something like a blade of grass or something like that that's handy that you can push in through the nozzle to clean it out. But certainly not an object that is harder than the material used to create that nozzle, such as the brass. So any type of metal would be detrimental to your nozzle and your spray pattern. So if you've got an old nozzle, the shape of the nozzle is deformed. So essentially it's probably bigger and the hole's actually bigger than what it should be. And it's not putting out the correct pattern. So you'll be using a lot more emulsion. So you're wasting product. You risk staining that area or overdosing the area and spraying past the point of runoff. So it's important to check your nozzles periodically. I'd suggest brass nozzles, if you're using them quite a lot, they've probably got about a 12-month life cycle. So you should consider replacing your nozzles every 12 months if you're using them regularly. They can even corrode. Being brass can be susceptible to corrosion, and once they corrode, it can close in the size of the nozzle, again affecting the spray pattern. And once they've corroded, you can't really, there's no coming back from that. They're basically, throwaway item and replace them with a new item. Well, a flat fan as opposed to an adjustable cone nozzle, the main reasons you would be looking to use a flat fan nozzle is the ease of application to point of runoff. You've got a much better chance and it's much easier to have a correct application with a flat fan nozzle. As you can understand, the nozzle is in a flat fan, so as you're applying, you can evenly apply to a surface. Adjustable cone nozzle has an output with a circle. So essentially, if you're applying with an adjustable cone, you could be missing an entire area within the middle of that cone. The surface applied will be in a circle. If you're trying to apply to the point of runoff, you'll see two lines essentially along where you've sprayed, and you'll be missing an entire section in the middle. So you're not being able to create a uniform barrier, and also risk overdosing at the edges of that spray pattern and causing runs and staining down the surface. With a flat fan nozzle, that's alleviated. It's much easier to apply to the point of runoff, and essentially you've got a flat fan and you can have an even layer and an even surface to treat. It's a lot easier to treat prior to the point of runoff and create a more effective barrier, more effective spray barrier.